Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Oceanside City Council. It is 2:30, October 6th, 2021. Mr. Duraro, do you need to do any kind of special
Well, we could do the roll call.
report before we start? No.
Real quickly, roll call for Mayor Sanchez.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kime.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen. Here. Councilmember Weiss. And Councilmember Rodriguez is not present at this moment.
Thank you. And this is post-October 1st, so we do not have any, we are not able to use Zoom for this meeting as of October 1st was the last day, so as of October 2nd. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I want to really thank my colleagues here for showing up an hour earlier. I can't remember the last time we had a special meeting, and the reason that I called a special meeting is because of there was no further guidance from the state. And in Oceanside, we still have several people who feel extremely uncomfortable and feel that it would be unhealthy for them to be in a crowd, and they consider being at a city council meeting as that. So we do have one general item, and that is my request for direction by the council to conduct virtual city council and commission meetings in accordance with requirements of AB 361. And just again to state, last Wednesday I received a notice of a special meeting by NCTD. They were noticing a meeting for the actual next day because they wanted to be able to continue to meet virtually. And I know the city of Carlsbad also looked at this issue and how to continue to protect the health and safety of their constituents. So I did meet with Mr. Mullen and went to him and asked, how can we do this? How can we basically continue the status quo, which is that we, in fact, have never really stopped meeting as a council in person. We actually have gone through all our meetings in person, except for maybe one or two times that a council member has felt, for whatever reason, participated by Zoom. I think I did that once, and it was very strange. I then decided it was better to be with, here. But it has been, I think, important for us to continue as a city to provide the maximum possible opportunities for our public to participate in their government. Lots has happened, lots has been happening because of COVID. A lot of very important decisions that the council is making and has been making. So when I spoke to Mr. Mullen, he referred me to AB 361. And Mr. Mullen, could you basically explain what we would have to do? I mean, I was hoping that we would continue on with what we were doing, and your response was?
So my response was we would need direction from the City Council to continue teleconference meetings in accordance with AB 361. That is the Assembly bill that was recently signed by Governor Newsom that allows public agencies, city councils to continue to conduct Zoom or teleconference meetings, provided certain findings are made. And one of those findings is that either state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, or the legislative body has determined that as a result of the emergency, meeting in person presents an imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees. We would be required to adopt a resolution that I've drafted and put before you if you would like to continue using Zoom and perhaps have a hybrid model where you keep the council chambers open. Of course, with this resolution, you as the legislative body would be allowed to participate remotely as well. And we would have to examine this resolution every 30 days. There'd also have to be some operational changes in terms of if the Zoom link, and I'm assuming would use link if it was your direction to continue on. If there was a technological glitch that prevents members of the public from participating in the meeting, then we would have to terminate the meeting in accordance with AB 361. That's one issue. We could also no longer have the practice where comments are due to the city clerk, or reservations, I guess, to speak are due at a particular time before the item is called. The city clerk would need to be able to just call on folks who are in the room available to speak. So there's certain operational changes we'd have to make. We're capable of making them, but it's within the discretion of the city council to decide if you'd want to continue to do this. You would simply need to make the findings I put in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. And we do have several comments from the public.
We have 6 speakers signed up for this item.
Shall we hear from the public first before discussing it? Because we really haven't had a chance to discuss. Yes? Okay.
Our first speaker is Joe Hill, to be followed by Arlene Hammerschmidt, to be followed by Erica Leary.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Joe Hill, 22-year Oceanside resident. There aren't too many positive things that you can say about the current pandemic. One very evident benefit in Oceanside and other cities was the ability for residents to be able to have their voices heard and actively participate in city government meetings and witness the voting and decision-making of the people they voted for in the elections. To put it in a more simple term, the council and commissions actually became more transparent to the residents of Oceanside. Transparency is good. Some of you actually say you believe in it. Communication technology like Zoom has truly come of age and will continue to get better. Failing to use it because you have a personal bias against it for some illogical reason is a great disservice to the voting public. Governing our city should be a participatory function with input from as much of the public as possible, using any and all methods of communication before consideration and voting by the councils and various commissions. I urge you to read the staff attachment number 2 from the Public Health Office and continue to use a hybrid Zoom for public meetings. Once again, transparency and trust are inseparable in government. Without one, you don't have the other. Thank you for your time.
Arlene Hammerschmidt, to be followed by Erica Leary, to be followed by Joan Bachman.
I wanted to say good evening, but it's not. It's afternoon. Hi, everybody. Arlene Hammerschmidt from Rollers Fire Mountain. It should be our first concern, as mentioned in opening statements, that being for public health and welfare. Forgive me, I've never tried to do this part before. Also, I looked up this afternoon that Lemon Grove, National City, and Encinitas have retained Zoom, and it was for primarily considering the public health and welfare, as well as participation in our own government. So please keep and even enhance, if possible, public access to city council meetings and speaking at them. Increased access increases transparency of the governance process and increases the public's trust in elected decision makers and staff. City council meetings and all commission meetings are the public's representatives doing the business of the city's voters. We entrusted you all with that responsibility. Transparency of the process is the public's expectation at this point. Decreasing access and transparency will only result in public outcry and backlash onto the City Hall and everyone working in it. I was kind of astonished when I went to the Planning Commission and saw on the agenda, this is the last Planning Commission meeting that participating via Zoom will be available, et cetera. I was like, okay, where did this come from? I had heard rumors. So please honor the public's health and well-being and increase the trust and transparency between the public, this council, and all staff members. Thank you for your time.
Erica Leary, to be followed by Joan Bachman, to be followed by Roger Davenport.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Erica Leary. I've been an Oceanside resident for over 25 years now. And I sent an email to the city clerk after the first meeting in early June, commending the city of Oceanside for their embracing technology and really the skill that was showed by this body in allowing at that time both in-person and remote participation. I thought that was an ideal setting, allowing the most access and participation possible from our residents. I was here in person, many others logged in on Zoom. I thought it was wonderful and hoped that it would continue long past COVID. I was not aware of the legal restrictions that might be in place in regards to public health orders. So at this time, I fully support reinstating Zoom options for people. And I hope that moving forward, not only in Oceanside, but throughout the state, we figure out ways to maximize public participation in our civic government. Thank you so much.
Joan Bachman, to be followed by Roger Davenport, to be followed by Cindy Davenport.
Hello, Joan Bachman. I've been here since the last general plan update, so it's been a while. I wore all this because I'm extremely involved in our community. I have been on every committee, everything that, not all of them, but I feel like I've been on every committee. And so being that involved, there are many times that I want to be here. There's also many people that I know, and they can't always be here, and they have a lot to offer you. So being involved with all these committees, with all these different things, my time is also limited. And coming here at 2:30 and having to come back at 5 is not great for me today, but I make it happen. So I think you really need to think about Zoom because it's so easy to do. My church does it. Our pastor was here I think at the last meeting. I was not able to be here, but she gave the invocation. And we have people that we haven't been able to see until we started Zoom because they were homebound, and they participate. So if churches can do it, if nonprofits like Buena Vista Audubon can do it for meetings, surely the city can too. So it's not that hard to do, and you've done a great job so far. Also, it does help us to see the Planning Commission. There's not always something we care about, but we can put it on and watch them go through an issue and understand some of their thinking and some of the deficits in areas they don't understand. I was kind of appalled at the discussion at the last Planning Commission. And some people obviously can only participate this way. Surely this qualifies for some sort of ADA category that the city is making things more accessible to people who could not physically get here, and especially older people that we have a lot of feisty older people in our community, but there are a number of them that are not leaving their homes, that aren't going out for a legitimate fear, and so for their health. So having this available, but still having the wisdom of those people, because these are very sharp people, and they need to participate. So please continue Zoom and in public, and I would do both. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Roger Davenport, 541 Crouch Street. Just have a couple quick things. Given that our society is still in the grips of a deadly pandemic, I, for one, would rather be in my living room than have to drive down here, park, and spend hours away from my home in places where I could be infected by this virus. That's the first point. The second point is that this experience over the last year and a half has shown us that the technologies are here. They're very successful. Zoom has been very effective during the pandemic, allowing people to have access and to have input into meetings such as this. Taking away access of people should be the last thing that this kind of body should do. It should be encouraging public access and public participation. So I encourage you to continue to allow access via teleconferencing well past any pandemic and well into the future. Thank you.
Cindy Davenport?
Good afternoon, Cindy Davenport, historic Loma Alta resident. And I want to thank the four of you present for attending this meeting. That is Mayor Sanchez, Deputy Mayor Keim, council members Jensen and Weiss. That means to me that you are trying to do your job. So I really appreciate your presence today to hear our voices. And of course, we want to hear your voices as well. And that's one thing that the hybrid meetings have allowed us for this, during this pandemic, both for our voices to be heard and for us to hear you, because not everyone can come down to a meeting. There are several categories of people in our community, whether elderly, disabled, or just having to work. And if you have some flexibility, you can't get off work on time, maybe you can at least join the latter part of the meeting by Zoom. So extending the hybrid versions of the meetings and allowing participation by remotely is something that's really at the heart of our democracy, our participation. And also, I do want to protect public health. There are 2 or possibly 3 members of my extended family who did come down with the Delta variant. The Delta variant is very scary. And I think we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our community. We shouldn't be taking any chances. But above all, let's keep setting the example of Oceanside being open and transparent and encouraging public participation in our city government. Thank you.
That concludes the speakers.
Thank you. And just to clarify again, Mr. Mullen, it would take an act of the state legislature to continue to use Zoom for the members of the public.
For outside of this pandemic, you're referring to, or
Yes,
just
yes.
permanent? I think there would need to be an amendment to AB 361 because it's focused on
The members of the local
Correct.
government versus the public.
correct.
And that's the only way they would have to amend it to be able for us to allow Zoom for the benefit of the public, not necessarily for the members of the council.
I think that this current bill covers the members of the public as well as the members of the legislative body. So yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Weiss?
I have a question for the city clerk. Do you have an opinion on continuing the teleconference meetings and what it would do to your operational issues?
Yeah. Obviously, Zoom is great for participation, transparency, allows for members of the public and members of the council, not just this council, but members of our boards and commissions to participate. If this council does decide to move forward with Zoom, there are some ramifications to the operations of not just the city clerk's office, but the other staff that clerk the meetings. We make it seem very flawlessly up here. Thomas and I have worked hard on Zoom, but you don't see the problems that we see. We try to keep that away from the council and the public, but there's been times where Zoom has dropped out on us. There was no audio being fed to the members on Zoom. There were some members registering under Bart Simpson crank call names, and there were some people that were giving expletive gestures and signs. There was a time where we almost had to shut down Zoom and restart it. If that's the case, we would have to adjourn the meeting, or in some cases adjourn the meeting entirely for the day while we generate a new Zoom link, and then we would have to properly legally advertise that. With AB 361, we would just have to adjourn the meeting and stop the meeting before we can move on to anything. So that is one operational disruption. The second operational disruption would be for the registration of the meetings by members that wish to speak on an agenda item. Currently, right now, we have a deadline of 4 o'clock for people that wish to speak on Zoom, and then we get them here on Zoom, and then we call them by their names. Not so with AB 361. We would have to allow them to register to speak all the way up until the agenda item is called. So we would have to figure out a way to get these people registered and called upon, and it could be ranging from anything from send us an email, I get my email on my phone, to raise your hand if you wish to talk. But also that removes any barrier that we have to filter out Zoom bombing and anybody that wishes to disrupt the meeting. Thomas and I are kind of experts on Zoom at this point. I am more concerned about the staff that clerks our boards and commissions meeting because they're just one person. In some case, they're the only person in that department that handles clerking these meetings. So if this council decides to move forward with that Zoom option, you would have to be comfortable with the fact that there may be a chance where we have to adjourn the meeting while we figure out what's going on with Zoom. And also, we would have to figure out operationally, how do we register people to speak on Zoom, and how do we filter out people that want to disrupt the meetings? And that has occurred at other meetings, either in the state of California or elsewhere. And unless you want to be viral and end up on YouTube, that's fine. But I prefer to have some sort of decorum with this meeting. So we would actually have to go down and determine how best we can call people when the item is called. Currently, right now, we print up a report, we give it to our mayor, and our mayor knows how many people have registered to speak on Zoom. Not so. So we could range from, we've had controversial issues where we hear all night, and we would have to go to the people on Zoom, which also builds an equity issue, which is a complaint I've heard from members that did register to speak in person that ask, why do we have to wait for the people on Zoom before we could talk? And it's because, well, they registered first, and then we move on to our members of the public. So there is that equity issue. Another advantage to keeping Zoom would be our commissioners. Some commissioners have approached me saying that they're not comfortable coming down in person, mainly because they're afraid of contracting the Delta variant. And also our consultants and applicants and there's another A word for our public hearings, our applicants and our appellants that wish to comment. If they live outside the area, do we have to pay them money to travel down here? And is it easier for them just to stay where they're at and make a comment on any public hearing item or an item at the Planning Commission? So there's multiple things that this council has to be comfortable with if they decide to move forward with Zoom. My recommendation is just to weigh the pros and cons, and you would have to be comfortable with revisiting this policy every 30 days to determine if there is a crisis that we need to move forward and meet virtually and allow Zoom.
Thank you. In looking at the requirements of AB 361, and as much as the technology seems to work, the reality is, in the absence of additional state legislation, once it's past the pandemic, it's no longer going to be allowed to have teleconference meetings. My concern is one of the findings that has to be made is the legislative body has determined that as a result of the emergency, meetings in person presents an imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees, and yet the chambers is open. We have no restrictions on the number of people, and there's no seating restrictions, so I'm not sure how we would even make that particular finding. So as much as I think it has been helpful, I've got serious concerns about continuing it based on these findings that we have to make.
Deputy Mayor Keim.
Again, something I've been proud of since the pandemic started is our council has been here in person. I think that's maybe what's getting lost today is this is not as, it's as much about the public, but it's about council. By allowing this to continue on Zoom, we could have a council member who wishes to be across the country conducting other business, participating remotely. And I think one of the most important parts of this job is being here and actually talking to everyone in the audience afterwards. If there's issues to discuss, I mean, that's what I think it's a paramount part of this job. I am, and additionally, I think I like our consultants and applicants to be present as well. This was not something that the city chose to do. We did not choose to end Zoom. The prior format, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the council, I was comfortable with, but now we have to make that finding, and that will allow council to participate remotely, which I have serious concerns about. I think it's important for all of us to be here, it's important for us to be present. Going forward, I think, maybe this is a good question for the city attorney, can we continue to use Zoom just for viewing, so we still have that option without triggering those different challenges of that the city clerk was discussing.
Yes. I mean, there's a wide range of choices in front of you. You could choose to have in-person meetings only. That's legally allowed. If you're going to have teleconference meetings where members or the public can participate remotely, then we comply with the requirements of AB 361. If I understand your question, it's really not a teleconference meeting. It's just the ability to view it. People have that ability now on KOCT in its streams, so I'm not sure why you would need Zoom to do that, but it would be another option.
I think now with the way that cable packages, sometimes not everyone has KOCT, it's easier to click on a Zoom link and have access to it. So I think if we could do that, that might be a compromise where we still have counsel here. Again, I think that's important. It's clear this new version of Zoom is much different than the old version. And what the city clerk was referring to is we could stop meetings for a week and city business could be postponed for technical glitches. And again, if the legislature decides to revisit that assembly bill, then that can be addressed. But right now, I think it puts us in a tough spot. And regardless of the decision we make today, we're going to be criticized. But through the pandemic, one thing I saw is cities, many cities continued to stay closed, and I really think that hurt public participation and the ongoing back and forth in democracy. So I'd like to make a motion for in-person.
Mr. Mullen.
Second.
In Poway and San Diego County actually are doing hybrid in-person and virtual options. But that's still in compliance with 361.
That's my understanding, yeah. And I think that's what your proposal was, is to
Yeah,
follow
my
those.
proposal's the hybrid, so that members of the public are especially allowed to be able to do that.
Yes.
And I think we only had a couple of times. I mean, I think I did it once. I think Councilmember Rodriguez did it once in this whole entire year and a half where we were not here. And I actually wanted to try the system. At the time, we had no vaccines, so I was actually scared to be here. But I didn't think it really allowed me for full participation, so I would spray everything down and wear my mask and all. Councilmember Jensen?
Based on the information that was provided, it looks like of the 16 cities that made a determination, half voted for in-person and half voted for virtual, and it appears to be one or the other, but not a hybrid version of both. Unless there's two that did go along with the hybrid, but the rest of the cities were either in-person only or virtual only. Is that correct? Yes? Okay. So I think, based on what we heard from the city clerk and the information that we have, if we have to choose between one or another, I would definitely support being in person. And if we can do an option, whereas people can still watch on Zoom, and I think that would be the best benefit. And, it's concerning, like the clerk said, that, of the people that wish to disrupt the meetings and the obscene gestures and the things that have happened on Zoom during the meetings, I think is concerning. So I'm going to support in person as well.
Well, I think the same problems would exist, right, if we allowed it.
And we do have a decorum order in our ordinance as well, where we can remove individuals, even in public, that are disrupting the meeting. And we've used that to remove the individuals from Zoom who are disrupting Zoom and giving middle fingers and holding up signs with expletives on it.
I mean, it happens here.
Yes.
So in person, not in person, it happens, and we try to control it. It's actually easier to control when it's virtual versus in person. Then you have to have one of the police officers escort the person, and sometimes we've had that happen where we have had to take a break. So I think actually it's easier if it's virtual, if we're going to have problems like that, and easier to control. So, and my thing is, we can at the same time be urging our representatives to change 361. What I'm concerned about is we're going to be spending time not being, with the public not being able to participate while the state changes 361, and then we'd have to bring it back anyway. So why don't we do it now? Deputy Mayor Keim?
I think I want to articulate one big point of the hybrid model is, again, it does not require council to be here. And while that's only happened a couple times so far, we're coming into 2022 and an election, and I think that could be challenging. It is important. I would like my colleagues to be here and have discussions at the dais. So again, this is different than Zoom meetings just a couple weeks ago in September. I get it. This is not the ideal situation we're in. Obviously, I understand people feel uncomfortable still with the Delta variant. I do think that overall we're in a much better place. Our vaccination rates are high, our infection rates are down. And I think this is better public participation than virtual only. And I think that's what we have to do, is either virtual or in person. It's difficult.
Or hybrid.
I don't think hybrid is a wise choice. And I think if we declare unsafe to be in the council chambers to do it virtually, then how do we invite other people in? And I think it raises a host of questions. I think the two cities that have done a hybrid are gonna, I don't know if there's gonna be any direction from the courts or any definition of that. But again, I think I prefer an in-person meeting, so I stand with my motion.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor, and that is to allow for Zoom with viewing only, no opportunity at all to speak. I believe that's the motion, correct? And there's a second.
The motion that I heard was to maintain in-person only meetings.
Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Unless...
That is right.
Madam Mayor, I can clarify. And if I need to amend my motion, I can. I'd like to have in-person meetings, but I would like to have Zoom available for the public to view.
That's what I heard.
Okay. So you would, your motion would be to continue in-person meetings using Zoom as a viewing only option.
Correct. If that allows us, and this is my big concern, I didn't retouch on it, is that mine is less about a disruptive person on Zoom. Again, I agree with the mayor. It's easier to deal with a disruptive person on Zoom and click. End than it is at the dais where one of our officers has to deal with it. Mine is if we have a technical malfunction, which I do regularly on my computer upstairs, that we have to stop that city business. We have to publicly notice the meeting again. Is that correct?
If we generate a new Zoom link,
so generate a new Zoom link, so we
renotice the meeting.
So we could,
if I'm correct in that, with the city attorney.
So we could conceivably have to push off until the next week when many of these actions we take have to be dealt with urgently. So those are real practical concerns I think we're overlooking with this. And again, this is not to discourage participation. These are just real challenges we're dealing with this assembly bill. And we have to make a hard decision. I think in person is the best choice.
Mr. Mullen, so we couldn't take a break and then come back on? Is that what you're saying?
I think the bill says that you have to stop public business if there's a technical malfunction until it's restored, until public access and the ability to testify has been restored. Now, I think what the city clerk mentioned is that could involve a new Zoom link, which we then would have to re-advertise. If it's the same Zoom link, I don't think you would. I think you just have to make an announcement that it's available.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was seconded by Councilmember Weiss. Okay. I am going to vote no on this because I do feel that we have a duty to our community for maximum public participation. I think this has worked well. There have been a couple of times where, especially in the beginning, when we didn't start off with Zoom. We started off by having people call in. And then we moved on to Zoom. But I thought that the city clerk was doing a good job. As he stated, it looked pretty seamless, here at the dais. So there would be issues internally to address, and with Zeb's couple of I don't know how many you have. major, whatever, PhDs or whatever you have, major, you have a ton of education. And I know that you've been handling it so well, Zeb, that I have every confidence that you can handle this if we were to say, let's do this, let's continue with the
We could
status quo.
definitely come up with operational procedures and changes.
Right. So that's why I can't support the motion tonight, and I would hope that we would reconsider and at least continue what we've been doing as we move along this this journey of legislating. There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-1. Sanchez, no.
Okay, then let's adjourn until 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Next item are items not on the agenda. Do we have any requests to speak?
We have no request to speak.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned until 3:30 for closed session.